Well, Ray, it's an honor to have you here with us today. We appreciate you taking time out of what I know is a very busy schedule to join us. I mean, you are known as the soil guru, if there ever was one.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's great to have you here.
Thank you, Jared.
You, when we asked what the greatest opportunity was in the little survey that we did both yesterday and today, it was improving soil health, where the participants recognize that as the greatest opportunity. And for context, Ray, the greatest challenge that they saw in their business was profitability.
Yeah,
Um, and so, I look forward to hearing from you, because if things are done right, we're not only doing things right for the soil, for the microbial life, for the animals, we will reap the monetary rewards as well.
yeah. I totally agree. I really appreciate it, by the way, that I'm here. And I don't know, I think the more I do that, I think in humility, we find out that we know very little. And the more I get involved in farming and ranching, and I know less. So, yeah, I think one of the biggest foundation for regenerative agriculture is humility. I think the more you understand, have that concept and framework of humility, it opens conduits for learning. And that's the biggest struggle we have is being humble enough to realize we don't know that much. That's why one of my favorite books is "You're Not That Smart."
Amen, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about that at the beginning. One of our ground rules was forget. Forget what you think you know. It's not what you know that'll hurt you. It's what you know that just ain't so, right?
oh
So
yeah,
have a little
yeah,
bit of a big dose of humility to be able to say, hey, I can learn from anyone. It doesn't mean that we, have to take it all in and have to all remember it. But that's my hope, is that from each of these presentations, we'll take some notes and we'll commit to just taking one action, as small as it might
yeah.
be, just one thing that we're going to commit to do, and that'll move the needle, and then it'll give us the momentum to keep going. So let's jump
Absolutely.
right in, Ray. Let's
Okay.
run with your presentation.
Okay, I'm gonna quickly go over through some slides I want to share because I think you wanted. I think the beautiful thing about it is economics. And let me get my slide show going. And you already got me to share my screen, right?
Yep, I think you're the co-host, so you should be able to.
Well, look at that. I've been given the power. That's kind of scary.
That is scary. Yep, but you
Yeah,
know what? You're just co-host, so I can always revoke it.
that may happen real quick. That's good. Thank you. Let's get rocking. Can you guys see that?
Yeah, new framework for
Yeah,
thinking. Yep.
yeah, yeah. I started off with that because I have this saying when I travel across the country. In the last 18, 20 months, I've been in 20 continents. I'm in 6 continents, and I've been in every state since I've started doing this. And I said, and I take this from the holistic management, a new framework of thinking from Alan Savory. I love that way he framed that. And Regen Ag, what it does, we attract you economically, but you later fall in love with the ecology. And every person that comes to our workshops and our field days, that's exactly what happens. We draw you in economically because we either list the workshop is how do you cut down inputs, how do you become more efficient, how do you save money, and then later on farmers realize, oh my gosh, it was always about the ecology. And ecology means the study of the house, in case anybody wonders what it is.
Hmm.
So ecology is study of the house. And so the first thing I want to talk about is mindset. The mindset is everything and how it impacts our truth and how it impacts how we view in the local community and what we've learned in school. Now, mindset is everything. It's the lens, it's the framework that you look at the natural system, it's the way you do things. Your mindset's everything. And then one of the things I got impacted early in my life, started realizing, and Alan Savory helped me a lot here about understanding holism and reductionism and what's the difference and how we reduced our science. And it doesn't work with natural systems and especially healing the human body. And this is where we're failing miserably. And number three is I tell farmers and ranchers, most people say, well, my goal is to be a rancher. No, your goal is to mimic nature as a rancher. How can you mimic nature's grazing system or their cropping system? All of our goals should be, how do we mimic nature, her design, her grazing systems, her architecture, her patterns? And the last one is, regen ag is not for everyone. Just be brutally honest. It is not for everyone because this type of system requires more thinking and more management. And then I'll just be brutally honest. Some people aren't willing to put the energy to it. So regen is not easy. It's tough. So I just want to get that very clear. And so again, this is where I've been in the last years of retirement, in the last 30 years, kind of my flight pattern. I'm kind of being funny, but I literally have traveled the whole country and the whole and large parts of the world to teach regenerative agriculture. But my journey starts here with when I hired with NRCS, 89 to 90 years. And this is where we're at. We're still here. Colorado. I took a picture of that picture in Colorado, and then I put a picture right there. If you can see it, is the organic system. And I did that on purpose because I love working with organic farmers and that. But I don't think we understand before 1935, a lot of the system was organic, and we've already destroyed a majority of our land before that in organic systems. I think sometimes we assume some of the most degraded soils I've seen are been in organic farmers, but I've also seen some of the wonderful soils on organic systems. So I just kind of want to give people proper perspective because either we're chemophobes, we blame organic, we blame conventional, blah, blah, blah. It's really not that. It's really the mindset. And also, too, here, as I speak all over the world, the country, I want to make sure that people understand that agriculture is the conduit to really fix these issues. And I think there's a great article in the Scientific American where we have more vapor storms threatening people and property, where they call them uh, uh, river, sky rivers, they call them, and where we're getting more and more water vapor in the atmosphere, and we're having a more dysfunctional water cycle, and yet we keep blaming the carbon in the system, in the atmosphere. But really, we're having more flooding. A lot of us farmers and ranchers are really saying we don't have those steady rains. We don't have that steadiness, that predictability to some degree that we would feel comfortable. This is our patterns. That has all been disrupted. And then also the other disruption that's happening on because I've been to Europe, is this kind of disruption, and we hardly talk about it. This was huge in about 6-7 months ago, about a year ago. You saw these tractors, and there was this huge disruption because of the force the government was trying to push on agriculture and farmers. And in fact, when I visited the Netherlands, they were talking about actually buying farms away because of the water quality issues. And their solution is, well, buy them out. It's kind of like they forget they eat. And it's really interesting how, but there's been that kind of disruption. But it really comes out to this. I always do this. I created the slide in 2007. And I said, the land cries out to us because the soil is naked, because it's starving. The soil, the ancient people called the plant the mouth of the soil. That's how it eats. So our soil is only not uncovered and bare, it's starving. It's thirsty because the water evaporates when you don't have the natural skin and the cover in the plant, and it's running a fever. We have all these issues, and you create this sensible and latent heat, which disrupted the water cycle. So we have no infiltration. Tell people we don't have a runoff problem on the globe. We have an infiltration problem. And so when one of the things of our demise economically is these four things that are happening in every ranch and every farm. And I can walk in there and look at the farm and ranch, and these four things are the most critical things, these processes. This is what the planet Earth does every day. And Keith really hit on the first one. If you don't have a living plant, and you don't have diverse living plants, if you don't have a living root 24/7, the soil eats by a living plant, converting light energy into chemical energy and feed the microbes. And without that, you don't have a water cycle. Without plants, you can't fix aggregates. And the end of the water cycle is done by microbes. They create these little balls of aggregates, and I'll show you a picture of that in a little while. And then the nutrient cycle, which is connected to the water cycle. But all this is driven by the software of the planet. And notice how I use the word software of the planet. Folks, we all have phones. Those phones are useless, worthless pieces of plastic and silicone material in there without software. The software of the planet is the diversity of plants, animals, insects, viruses, humans, diversity, plants, animals, all of it. It runs on this. Our planet Earth runs on diversity. So more the diverse the farm and the ranch are, the better the software works. And the only virus to the planet of the software is us. It's our thinking. Please understand that, again, let me touch upon, a lot of us don't realize 60% of our rain comes from the ocean. That's the big water cycle. That's causing the climatic issues, in my humble opinion, is the plants, the small water cycle. We don't have enough evapotranspiration of plants, which bring the clouds and stabilizes and keeps the soil cool. It's all these things that are causing this great disruption. And this is the main issue. We're missing and we're blaming carbon. Well, in some sense, it is related, but that's not the big issue. The water cycle is. This is a huge issue. About 20% of our landmass is naked, bare, reflecting heat. I grew up in the 5th largest state in New Mexico. It looks like that. Most of the West looks like that, reflecting heat. So it's really important to understand that. So what's caused a lot of this disruption and created much more of an uncovered soil surfaces and leading to all this dysfunction? Well, one of the things is that's really, really impacted our country, and not only our country, but Central America, Latin America, and I travel all over, is this. It's this detachment from the land. This is the current ag model and the way we treat soil. This is the way I was taught in school. It's a growing medium. Got some bacteria. It's a growing medium. And I went to graduate school for soils. And this is the way I walked away. It's something you put plants in. It's a mineral matrix. That's what I grew up thinking. This is what I went to school. And they still teach this in schools. This is the regenerative model. How we keep a living plant and don't disrupt it. It's alive. That's the regenerative model. Look at the compare contrast of those two. I put that just to give you the absolute contrast of this system. That's the regen model. And one of the biggest struggles I have when I teach all over the world, about 90% of the farmers believe it's a growing medium. It's not alive. Another big issue that I have to deal with, we reduce the current model into a factory machine. This is the way we raise our animals. We as a society push the farmer and rancher down the society through reductionism. Let's be efficient. I hear that word all the time, efficiency. This is efficiency because we don't really understand efficiencies in an ecological context. These pigs on the left side they make about $120 a hog. The ones here on the side, they make $1,200 a hog. There's a huge difference in people wanting grass-finished pork. This is nature's way of doing business. This is man's way of doing business. Also, too, while we all complain about the young people wanted the rise of the Impossible Burger, and I know why they called it impossible. It's impossible to swallow. It's disgusting once you eat it. But young people, I have a lot of respect for the younger people. Believe it or not, these younger generations, they don't want food raised here. They want food raised here. They know something's wrong with the current model, and I appreciate it. And they see that this is not the way they want to run their farm and the ranch and go back into the farming community. The young generation doesn't want that. Currently, the reason why we're going broad economically is this right here. It's a great little picture. It shows this is the majority of the Midwest uncovered. It's run on ancient sunlight. What would I mean by ancient sunlight? Fertilizer, chemicals, all that is ancient sunlight. Diesel, all oil-based. Ranches and farms should run on new sunlight. This is a cover crop in the fall. This is this early spring. Both pictures are in the spring. Well, who do you think's capturing sun? Which one thinks they treat the soil like a living ecosystem? It's easy to see that. Here's where we're going broke. Tillicide, too much haying, too much fertilizer, too much pesticides, too much over applying manure, too much. Moron, the moron principle, moron. And this is a common from Latin America, South America, Europe, all of it. Very common. This is the main issues that we're seeing. Over applying of everything. So what's caused this is social conditioning, I call it. This is why Regen Ag doesn't grow so fast. Social conditioning from the family, the community, the schools, work, and church. What do I mean by conditioning? We condition our kids when one of your children say, "Hey, Dad, why don't we try something new?" And you'll say, "Oh, no, no, son, Grandpa taught us this way. Great grandpa." We condition people. When you go to organic for the first time, people say, "You're an idiot." Or you go to no-till, "You're an idiot." Conditioning. When you want to challenge something in the church doctrinally and say, "Hey, maybe there's a different view looking at this scripture." Oh, no, stay in your lane, bro. Same thing. And they do this in church. You do this in work. They told me that the same. Hey, Ray, push the money, stay in your lane. Don't ask questions why we're going broke. But here's the thing. I want to share this. I love this graph because it really mimics the mimics the United States. Through the 1920s, look at the farmer's share, look at the farm losses, and look where the money goes. It goes to big ag business. I call it big pharma, the big chemical companies. And the universities and all these people are all part of big pharma. The corn board, the soybean board, the wheat board, all these, it's like Stockholm syndrome. We protect big ag. We protect it because we feel like we're challenging it and say, well, no, the thing is broken. It's broken. A majority of the wealth is going to them. Am I opposed to the tool makers? No. I'm opposed to farmers and ranchers going broke. That's what I'm opposed to. That's the issue. We still need tools. But then if our life is such a great quality and we're doing so well, how come farmers and ranchers have the highest suicide rate of the top 5 or 6 careers? Because here it is. Farmers are the poorest and ranchers are the poorest millionaires I know. You're worth millions and no cash flow. The stress is brutal. Well, why? Because we're working against the natural system. We're fighting it. My school, this is my college education, summated in that reductionism. You see all these pieces. This is when I took when I went and took chemistry, science, pathology, all this, all broken up in pieces. But not one professor said, "No, Ray, let's put it all together. And the end of the goal is to mimic nature. Let's put chemistry, biology, and all of these sciences to make it function as a whole. Mimic it." We were taught reductionist science. Same thing with the human body. When you go to the doctor, they break you up into pieces. Go to the liver doctor, the heart doctor. That's why doctors, I do not go to doctors unless I've been, again, in an accident. I cut my own foot or something with a chainsaw. I'll go to the doctors. But for chronic disease, I do not go there. They're horrible. They're not good at dealing with chronic issues. Same thing with our soils. Our soils are chronically sick. So the first thing I teach people, the strongest geological force on the planet is life itself. See that. All of us that grew up in the West have seen that. That plant is leaking acids, making association with fungi and bacteria and breaking rock down. It's the soil biology that brings the minerals to the plant. Let's make that real clear. It does not happen by magic. Microbes do that. Fungi do that. Plants break rock down. The strongest geological force you can put on your soil is a plant. Look, this is, you think we all complain about our crappy soils? Some people, I have crappy soils and I'm good with it. I'm nothing but rock. This is Australia. This is gypsum seabed salts. How come it's dark back on top? Farmers and ranchers, life. Microbes do that. Plants change geology. That's who does that. That's the number one thing I got to get across. If I can't get you to understand that, I can't help you cut off your inputs. Plant and soil are one. Oh my goodness. When I first learned that, I came screaming out of my bedroom going, oh my God, wife, I get it. Plant and soil are one. She looks at me and she goes, oh my God, I married you. You got problems. But it's that powerful. The plant is the mouth of the soil, ladies and gentlemen. It's the mouth. Keith's been hitting it. You don't put living plants 24/7, as long as possible, you're not going to get the soil to be restored. This is where we're going broke. I want this to leak. This is a living root leaking liquid sun, thousands of carbon photosynthetic molecules to feed microbes. This is what I want. This is right here. Look at the protozoa. These are one of the key things I look in the soil. If the soil's healthy, if they're present, that means there's a healthy ecosystem. I call them my micro cows. That's where that. This is where we missed in college, in school. This is my herd. Look at the body condition score of that, Jared. That's beautiful. That's what I want. And then these organisms right here. And I'm going to go very quickly because if we don't understand this right here, then you don't understand how it's going to change the economics. Look at the first 2 or 3 inches of this soil. These are called the mesofauna, earthworms, the critters, the dung beetles. They're the ones that are doing the cycling. 95 to 98% of all nutrient cycling is by microbes. This is how we reduce our fertilizer, herbicide, and pesticide costs. The more you disc this, till it, don't feed it, you leave it bare, you overgraze it, the more you write a check. Just as simple as that. This is the system that runs the nutrient cycle. Okay? Now, Biomimicry Institute, one of my favorite websites, Biomimicry Institute. If I had gone to college, this is what I would have gone to school for. Biomimicry. And it's a phenomenal place of learning how powerful. And so it's taking engineering, computer science, it says, and asking one very simple question. Ask nature how she does business. Well, the same thing for agriculture. I love showing this picture. If our cities were designed on biomimicry, this is the way they would look. You might even get me to live there. But this is the way we design cities. When we want to control and we want to enforce and we don't appreciate nature's balance. Look at, I'll show it again so everybody goes, nature's way of designing cities, the way we're supposed to design them, the way we design them. Pretty simple. Look at the difference. The temperatures, when we add more trees, they showed crime rates go down, temperatures. Farmers and ranchers who have a farm or ranch next to a city, they get less rain because the rain clouds get pushed by the heat that comes off it. Crime rate goes down if we build cities like this. Makes a big difference. So now let's get into how farmers are doing this and how we're cutting our costs. When I tell people we're going to mimic nature, this is what we're talking about. The architecture. Look at the plants. Look at the structures. Look at the broadleaves, the lengths, the small leaves, the different legumes. Architecture in the forest and the prairie. We are designing covers that mimic those. Both systems have living plants. The co-op doesn't feed those. There's no fertilizer applied to, no herbicides. Animals on both systems, living plants, all the principles of soil health lie on those two pictures, and we'll talk about that in a sec. But let me zoom along so we can move on. This is what Keith was talking about, how we're designing cover crop mixes to do this, mimic the architecture. We're doing this all over the world and all cropping systems, from tobacco to potato to wheat to corn to soybean. It doesn't matter. And if we have a crop failure, you know what we call that? Organic feed, especially if you have cows. Works beautiful. This is the nexus of what we're trying to do. This is no-till in Tennessee with no cover crops. 50 years of no-till. I used to think no-till was the most awesome number one. I don't believe that anymore. Cover crops is number one, and no-till is a close second. No-till stops the destruction of the house, but it does not bring the healing process and not feed the system. It's cover crops. I hate the word cover crops, Jarrett. Hate it. I prefer calling it service crops. Why? They service the microbes, which the service crops service the corn and the soybean and the wheat and the alfalfa, the next crop. They service the climate. They service the cow. They service the organisms. They service life. They service the bank. They service everything. Hate the word cover crop. Why? Because you mentioned cover crop in the United States. Oh my gosh, I don't have an erosion issue. They think it's about erosion. No, it's not. Service crops, they're biological primers. So this is what farmers are doing. They are building this kind of machines now in corn and soybean areas. That's not just a sprayer, that's a seeder. So they can spray it on top of standing corn. So you don't ever leave that ground bare at the end of the year. And then they're planting into this. They're planting pumpkins, watermelons, tobacco, corn and soybean. They're doing all these now going into this type of system. Rolling the cover with just the planter. This is happening everywhere. It's called green planting. We are capturing sun. We are reducing fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides. We have farmers no longer use insecticides. We'll show you some more case studies. Look at the herbicides when the cover crop dies, it releases natural herbicides and suppresses weeds. We save parts of Arkansas if it wasn't for cover crops. Pigweed was taking Arkansas over. Could not find any more chemistry to control pigweed. Cover crop, a little bit of herbicide, saved parts of Arkansas, period. It was awesome. Planting tomatoes. Here's Russell Hedrick. Some of you have known him, but he's North Carolina's dryland corn champion. This kid is incredible. What makes him, I call him a kid, he's a good friend of mine. He's in his early, he just turned 41. What makes the guy such an impressive young man? He never went to college. Diesel mechanic and in a diesel and a fireman. Brilliant. What makes him so good? He's a farmer scientist. One of the most, he does more test plots than I've ever seen. He learned regenerative from watching YouTubes from us. He went to the best university in the world, YouTube University. He proved no-till works. We used to hear no-till, no yield. 459 bushel corn in the soils in North Carolina are not Iowa. 40% less fertilizer. He yielded so well, the university went to go check 4 times because they were freaked out. They were scared that he won that yield. He did it with biologicals, Haney test, cover crops, and he's a good scientist. He's a great practitioner. How about the Rulons in Indiana? Good size operation, 5,000 to 7,000 acres. This is what they say, conventional versus no-till and cover saves them a year. Over $608,000 a year in cover crops, a $101 advantage. So what do they say? Reduce equipment costs, reduce fertilizer, increased yields, drought tolerance, less erosion, less environmental impact, less lawsuits. This is his slide. This ain't my slide. And they're still doing covers and no-till. How about my friend Adam Chappell? Adam's right here in the center. Got a master's degree in Arkansas. He's a cotton plant. What changed him in his whole operation? YouTube University. He had a master's in entomology, and his system was failing. In fact, he asked his professor, main advisor, and he says, "Don't do cover crops, Adam, because you're going to have pest problems and pest issues." Well, I'm glad he didn't listen to his advisor. And look what happened with Adam here. This is what caused Adam to go and look in the internet for something to control weeds. They were losing the battle. Now he grows furrow rice. He grows cotton. He grows rice. He's one of the very few farmers in Arkansas that grows rice, irrigated rice. By the way, they get 50 inches of rain over there, 50 to 60, and they still irrigate, but he has reduced his fertility costs by 50%, 75% in reduction in herbicides. His seed costs went down 64%. How? Cover crops, low disturbance. He's a good manager. He's a good manager. Haney test. Are we beginning to see a pattern here? Look how he rows cover crops on furrow. We're not. You can't do cover crops on flood irrigated fields. That's what we were told. Look at this, how he's rolling the covers. Beautiful. Look at this. I like this. And so look at that. You can see those little channels there. That's where the furrow. I don't know, guys, but that gives me goosebumps. It mimics nature, rolls down, because what does the forest floor have? That turns into dry residue. Nature has leaves in the forest. In grasslands, there's always a living residue skin, never leaves it bare. What's the difference in his system? It used to cost him 71. This is how much he used to spend on disking, field cultivator, and that. His conventional system returned $17 an acre. His regen system, $122 an acre he makes, because he doesn't have to do all these tillage, field cultivators. I don't know how many times they ran it a lot. We in the West, we turn our soils into talcum powder. That's how many operations they ran. Look at the difference of his soils, the old conventional neighbor and his soils. Neighbors, his cover crops, less tillage, careful with the chemicals. I don't have time for Brandon Rocky. I love Brandon Rocky. Go on his website, go on YouTube and try Brandon Rocky, regenerative potato. He's awesome grower of potatoes in central Colorado. Does an incredible job. Excellent quality. If I buy potatoes, I'd buy it from Brandon because the quality, no more fungicides, no insecticides, completely eliminate all those sides. Side means to kill. I went to college in Las Cruces. I grew up here, went to college here. This is the way I went to what they taught me in college, Jared. This is the way I was taught irrigated pecans. We were taught in the high deserts of New Mexico, we leave the ground bare. Why? Competition. They're going to steal water and nutrients. You don't let anything grow next to the pecans. That's what we taught. Now we teach this. Same area, we teach this. We plant cover crop, permanent covers or cover crop mixes under the pecans. Organic matter went up. Water use went down. Elimination of insecticides, no fungicides. We eliminated all those issues. Yields stabilized. Go figure. Mimic nature. How about Jerry Doan? Because I know you a bunch of ranchers. And I know some of you know Jerry, but Jerry does an incredible job. He's in North Dakota. Great group of people up there. It was North Dakota for me. Was the beginning of the soil health journey. Here's Jerry. I was there when we took that picture. That is a 300-acre mix. He's using multi-species mixes and stockpiling them and grazing them in the winter. $50,000 savings in haying every year now in feed costs. He saves $200 of the head after all cost by raising mixes in North Dakota, the tundra. People say, well, we can't do it here. Well, I'm sorry, that's not true, because if you've been to North Dakota, it's brutal. I'm a warm season cover crop. I wouldn't make it in North Dakota. I could tell you I would freeze. I live in Missouri for a reason. So $50,000 of hay saving, of not raising hay, but he lets it stockpiles and he checks the quality, and those cattle do really well in the winter, and they do that. My sheep hate hay. When I had my sheep, they did not like hay. They want stockpile. So cover crop mixes are great. And by the way, over here in the south of where I'm at, in southern Missouri, we can get our cattle to finish on these mixes. they can gain 3.1 to 3.4 pounds a day on those cover crop mixes. That's the way we can finish our cows here. Okay, wrapping it up with one of our famous friend of mine. He was in Common Ground, Alejandro Carrillos. I grew up in New Mexico, and I've been to his ranch 5 times. He started with 100 cows. Las Cruces is here. It's a 4-hour drive to his ranch. It is incredible. And he's a 4th-generation rancher. Let me show you what he was able to do. This is the way New Mexico looks. Arizona, most of the West looks like this. I was a district conservationist in Malheur County in Oregon, Idaho. A lot of our West looks like this to this day. Okay, this is the problem. Alejandro this is hot. Look at his temperatures. He gets 10 inches of rain a year. He says, oh, teasingly, he says, if I get more than 10 inches, that's way too much for me. I can do great. But when he gets down to 3 inches, last year, 2 years, he's only had 3 inches. He says, it was rough, Ray. But I like to have at least 10 inches in hot, brutal summers he has. This is what he's doing. He groups the animals tightly. Alan Savory had a huge impact. Mentors helped. We took that drone footage, 2 cowboys, group the cattle and move them like buffalo. They move them from one spot of the ranch to the other spot of the ranch. We were there when we took this drone footage. 2 cowboys did that. So the idea is taking from one part of the ranch, moving to the other parts of the ranch that are not doing so great. I call it mobile link, linking one part of the ranch that's doing a little better and moving the seed to the other part of the ranch. And how do you move the seed? Right here, through the hide of the cattle and through the manure. Mobile link. There was a great research paper they wrote, Mobile Link. It's done by the Europeans. I thought that was a great paper where you're taking a degraded area or a better part of the ranch and moving it and creating a ripple effect and moving and bringing life back into the ranch. And there, look at the power of manure in the desert floor. Just to show you real quick, this is the way, if you drive from Albuquerque or north of a little where I grew up, 75 miles north to El Paso, where Alejandro lives, that's the way it looks. They taught us in school in range management, creosote, mesquite, they're invasives. There's an ecological shift. It will never allow the grasses to move back. And it shifted ecologically. Alejandro says, well, I'm glad my cows didn't read the research papers. This is Alejandro's ranch. I was converted back into what the Spaniards, ladies and gentlemen, this is what the Spaniards saw and my forefathers were the original Spaniards that settled in New Mexico. I got to see what my forefathers saw 500 years ago. This is how powerful cows are. This is what ranchers are doing. You group the cows tight. There's a rancher in Mexico that is restoring his mind. He's taking the mind and restoring that with cattle. This is the way it looked before, and taking it to that, and taking it to that. Cows will heal the planet. Cattle are powerful. Some of the best soils I have seen are integration of cover crops, no-till, and cattle and sheep. Some of the best soil health scores. But I'm almost done here, Jared. I want to make a very quick thing. I keep hearing pushback and says, because again, we protect the big pharma and we have Stockholm syndrome, but we got to feed the world. I believe that. Man, I used to embrace that baby, hold my hand to my chest and pledge allegiance that, yes, we got to feed the world. As an ex-Peace Corps volunteer, I'm going to tell you, no, we don't. We teach the world to feed themselves. Here's an example right here, Pasadena, Darvis family, 1/10 of an acre, $40,000 a year on 1/10 of an acre, 6,000 pounds of vegetables in a little subdivision in Pasadena. Don't tell me we can't feed the world. That is the biggest lie that we've ever perpetuated, and we believe it. And we'll sit there and defend big pharma and saying we got to feed the world. And so I don't buy it. Here's the change that's going to happen. I love this when it first came out. 70% of millennials read labels. Agriculture is going to change from quantity to quality. And the young generation, they want to eat well. They're foodies. My daughter's a foodie. She's 30 some years. We're foodies. We want quality. Why? Let thy food be thy medicine. This is where it's heading. Those who are in the regen are putting themselves in a position where they're going to get more money down the road for better quality. People say, well, regen food's expensive. My neighbor 2 weeks ago died of a colonoscopy. They ruptured her intestines. You want to know what's expensive? Go to the doctor. Go to the hospital. I have a daughter that's a nurse. I have many people in the medical field. One of the highest rates of death is going to the hospital, believe it or not. We need to understand food is medicine. And once you understand the power of food and the value of it, the price should go up. Organic, be careful. Just because it's organic look, this is a good picture of Gabe's eggs. They have to be grazing on those grasses and eating the bugs. Is there a difference between grain-fed and grass-fed? Yes, there is. We have the science to prove it. There's a great book by David Montgomery and his wife that checked the food and the research to show the difference of grass finish. I want my animals not grain-fed. I want them grass-fed. I'm willing to pay the difference, but it's hard to finish grass, to do it right. A lot of producers do not do it right, and it's difficult. It's not easy to do grass-fed. Why should we care? Right here, folks. I think this picture summates it really well. And I think this is where Robert Kennedy is trying to get rid of the processed food. And he understands that it starts with the soil. I put this because this is the brutal reality. We all struggle at becoming more and more obese because the way we eat, the soils are degraded. We're starving. We're nutritionally starving. And it starts back with the soil. And he understands that. So, summating this up, the quality of the food, all this is going to start when we get these four things right on the ranch and farm. You got to capture sun. You got to have a functioning water cycle. You got to have a functioning nutrient cycle. And please understand it runs by diversity of life. And so the more diverse you're in your operation, the better it is. I came up, these are the four principles that we picked up through time. First principle is, I always go, is context. Understand your ecological, your cultural, and I forgot to put economic here. I got another economic. Understand your ecological, your economic, your cultural, your social, your spiritual context. When I walk on as a consultant, I take this first. What is your context? Where's your farm located? Where's your ranch located? One of the two things I want to do right away is careful on the chemical and physical. Cut down your disturbances. Careful with your tillage, over application of manure, your fertilizers, fungicides, insecticides. And then this other part is, how do I integrate diversity of plants, insects, animals? And I added one, time. Time, what do I mean? I want diversity within space and time. Can I put more covers in between the corn? How can I integrate more covers in space and time? When you don't move the animals to the same field every time, move them around differently, diverse of time. And the last one, work in relationship, in community. Nature works in communities. I tell farmers, don't do this by yourself. Don't do this by yourself. If you do, good luck. You'll spend the rest of your life trying to figure it out. I tell farmers, work together. If you have 40 years left, you don't have years left. You have 40 opportunities, 40 chances. It takes a whole year to find out whether your practice worked or not. I tell farmers, work together. One rancher does this, another rancher does this. You put your test plots together. If I have 5 guys I work with, I got 5 years of research in every year. That's what makes Russell Hendricks so powerful. He's always putting plots. But I'm going to tell you, I'll leave you with this last note, Jared. Do you know how many landowners all over the country actually do test plots and do check
Mm.
strips and actually do what I call calibrate their soils? They put zero rate, half rate, full rate fertilizer. Less than 1 or 2% of the
Yeah.
producers do that. And so we're guessing, and that's the issue. We're not doing our own science. And I tell producers, do not wait for NRCS, do not wait for the extension, do not wait for the university. Do it yourself. And Nebraska has a great the University of Nebraska has a great program teaching farmers how to set up their own demonstration plots. Excellent. So, folks, I thank you, Jared. I know I went through like drinking water through a fire hose, but
Yeah, it's all good.
I
It's all,
just give people a little framework on what I'm doing on a national, on a global scale, how I'm working with producers.
yeah, we love it. That has been a great addition to this summit, Ray, and so glad that this is being recorded, that we'll be able to go back and watch the recording, recapture some of the wisdom that you shared. Ray, when somebody gets the regenerative bug for whatever reason, and I'm finding more and more that our human health is the driving factor. And our clients, they're saying, hey, I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me or
Yeah.
my kids. And I started to, and the doctors couldn't figure it out. And so I started to research and found out, oh, it goes back to the way our food's raised.
Yep.
So it's interesting that a lot of even the farmers are regenerative because of a health concern. The profitability is another one. But what would you say to somebody who's, you know, they want to do things right, they sincerely want to, but they just don't really know where to get started?
I'd go to a school. I go
Yeah.
to Soil Health Academy. That's why we created Soil Health Academy. There's a lot of good schools out there. Keith, I would definitely go with Keith. Keith Burns does a great job. I go every January, the second week of January. There's a great school that Keith puts and then we go to when you got a person that's been doing regenerative agriculture for a while, kind of the higher level producers there. It's in Phoenix, Arizona. My brother's there. I love going to Phoenix in the winter. It's the only time I like
Mm-hmm.
going to Phoenix. But that's a great school. Soil Health Academy is a great school. Um, Minnesota Soil Health Coalition has some good schools. South Dakota Soil Health Coalition, Wisconsin Soil Health, they have good schools. Wisconsin and farmers driven schools are some of the best.
Mm-hmm.
Wisconsin has one. Minnesota Soil Health Coalition, they just started. South Dakota Coalition, one of the best. Arkansas Soil Health Alliance. All these are farmer driven alliances that I was kind of the help instigate some of those because I told the producers, you drive it. We want ecologically regenerative farms to drive it. Let farmers and ranchers teach each other, not being controlled by the industrial complex, which I really feel that the universities are controlled by, corn and soybean and all these other groups. And I said, you be on your own. NRCS is controlled, whether they want to realize it or not. That's why I was censored as an NRCS employee to keep my mouth shut. Because
Mm.
when the industrial ag complex makes an argument, they go to the senator and the senator calls the head of the agency, then it goes downhill. So
Mm-hmm.
come to a school that are driven and run by farmers and ranchers.
Yeah. Yeah. Really good. Amen. Absolutely. That's one of the reasons that we do these virtual events, is to certainly, we're not going to be able to cover all the aspects of regenerative agriculture, of running a profitable business. But we whet your appetite, and hopefully we give you some resources so you clearly know what your next step is. Do you think we've reached a tipping point with some of the changes that are happening politically where regen will become mainstream?
My honest truth, no. I think we're at 1 or 2%. If you listen to Simon Sinek, who's one of the best speakers on the law of
Mm-hmm.
diffusion, He says I say that we're 1 to 2% until we reach 13.5%, that gap, then the whole thing will be shifting. I think we're in the awareness state. I think we're at the early, like you, Jared, you're one of the early innovators, early adopters. All these other, we're at the early stage. I think I will probably not see it in my lifetime, but I think we're coming and it's growing fast. Cover crops have grown in some states by 60%, but we still got a lot of bare ground. The places that are going to change the quickest, Jared, is Latin America, Australia. They don't get government help. They don't get cost share. I'm consulting on the largest grape grower in Mexico. I get requested to go down to Nicaragua. In fact, I'm going next week and helping the largest premium tobacco grower into regen. They're growing quicker. They're coming faster. Why? They get no government help. In fact, some of them said, Ray, we don't want the government to help us because they may take our land away. Australians are on their own. They form these groups. They work together. They don't work by themselves. They're really big in trying to work as a community. So I think United States, we cost share in a lot of ways is hurting us. And I'm not opposed to it, but the way we set up NRCS for the last 80, 90 years, it meant well, but it started to end up being enabling people instead of helping them out.
Yeah. Yeah. What will it take to get to that tipping point here in the United States?
Well, one thing I want to make sure so the audience I don't want people thinking, I really believe it's going to be a transition time. I never, ever recommend getting farmers off cost share, chemicals, fertilizer right away. Government help. Don't do it. It'll collapse. When I work with a producer, it's gradual. I work with them gradual. So it's going to take time to shift because when people want to cut off fertilizer and chemicals right away, like Sri Lanka did, they wanted to go organic. Great goal. People went hungry. We have to be very careful how we transition people. Soil's not ready. We have 200-300 years of soil degradation, and all of a sudden we're going to put 3 or 4 years and think we're going to magically shift it. We can't get rid of Roundup right away. We can't get rid of those herbicides that I'm not a big fan of, but they're tools. Gradually work our producers out of this system. We've been doing this for a long time. So it's going to take us a good transition time to back our producers away. So I say very cautiously with wisdom. And I think I've been trying to get a message to Mr. Kennedy that we have to be very careful how we transition. And because if you go tell people we're going to cut you off right away, and because I have a lot of environmental groups where, Ray, we're poisoning ourselves, we're doing this. I goes, yes, I get it. But the soil's not ready. Do you want massive starvation? You have to understand the context of the producer and where they're at. Please understand that 98% of the farmers globally don't really understand soil function and don't believe the soil's alive. So understand where we're at contextually. That's where we're at soberly. And it's hard. I've only been impressed with 10 or 15 farmers that I've met with their understanding of soils. And I've taught thousands. I don't know anything. So
right.
So yeah, just I think we need to be sober at where we're at.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, hopefully we are doing our small part here by spreading the message, making people aware. It's neat to see that cover crops and soil health is becoming more mainstream. You're starting to read more about it in the traditional trade publications, whereas, when I think I attended your first school with Gabe and Alan Williams, trying to think, it might have been 2017. It was still pretty fringy then. So in the last 8 to 10 years, it's become a lot more mainstream.
Oh, it's exploded. The growth is incredible. And please, I think, let me go back to RFK. I think he means well. I don't know the political pressure that man's under.
Sure.
I don't think we understand the power of the industrial military complex and big pharma, PHARM and FARMA.
Yeah.
I think
Yep.
we need to understand who controls agriculture in our government. It's these big three. And
Hmm.
so there's a lot of forces. And so that's why I left, I retired from the government. I was fed up. After 30 years, I was done. The corruption is brutal. So what we're doing here, guys, what you're doing what you guys, all of you that came today and are listening into Jared's podcast, this is how we're going to change agriculture right here. And it's changing with these workshops, these field days. I used to think we were never going to change agriculture. If you would have asked me 20 years ago, I had no hope for agriculture. None.
Hmm.
I have more hope, Jared, for Chernobyl, where it blew up to heal, than our agriculture lands. And
Is
people
that
look
right?
at me and they say, "Are you crazy? You remember when they blew up? I was 25 years old. They said that was going to be a desert." Audience, Google Chernobyl today. Deer coming back, fox, everything's coming back. They found a fungi eating radiation in the core. Why
Hmm.
do I say it will heal quicker than our agricultural lands? Because in our agricultural lands, we are tilling, spraying every day. We never give that land rest. More healing will happen in Chernobyl than we have in our ag lands. And so that's why I'm so brutal about it. And that's where we're at. We push the limit and we don't give nature a rest. And a rest could be just simple cover crop is giving it a rest and feeding it. So
Sure.
that's my thought process. I think we're at a very, very low percentage from my, and I've been 50 states and 6 continents. I'm just giving you my humble perspective.
Yep. Yeah, that's good. I appreciate your perspective because uh you have a lot broader context than I think anybody else here. You've seen it from different continents, from different approaches, um, in government involvement, no government involvement, profit driven versus sometimes, uh, perhaps in countries where the herbicides were banned
Yeah.
uh, and so then they have to just are just left to figure things out. And so that perspective is awesome. There's a quick question here, Ray. David asks, are you advocating growing our pastures in a service crop blend? He talked about a farmer in North Dakota that was cutting and saving grasses for winter feed. Is there
Yep.
somewhere we can read about this?
Yes. Yes. Jerry Doan does a really good job on his go on YouTube, again, YouTube University. But I also do like here in the West, what we'll do is like I design a cover crop mix. Another person to see if you can do on North Carolina, we have uh, the professor at North Carolina at NC State. Um, uh, what's his name? Oh my gosh, my name is his name is. But we there's a lot of type cover crop mix is on grazing systems on YouTube.
Okay.
There's a lot of that on how to design them. I designed
Okay.
I designed a bunch of mixes. In fact, they have Ray's Crazy Mix. I designed a mix, and today it's being sold in North Carolina and that. And and so yes, we're using. I definitely I use them as a gap. We're using them in Colorado, in Western Colorado and Eastern Colorado and Western uh, Kansas is doing a lot of mixes under pivots. In fact, one of the largest operations out there is moving the cattle out of the feedlots and letting them graze on the mixes, cover crops on under the pivot, and they're gaining 3.1 to 3.4 pounds a day grazing them. And so yeah, it's a great way. I love the mixes. Now they're a little more expensive, but they're worth it. But if I was finishing cattle, and our fescue here is pretty poor in the summer, I plant summer mixes. I no-till summer mixes into my cool seasons, and so it provides a gap. And I don't use herbicide, and I didn't use any fertilizer or nothing. And we got 10-foot, 11-foot high cover crop mixes. But you have to have the rain, and it's got to be timing, and you have to learn how to design the mixes correctly. So there's a lot of things designing, just Google designing cover crop mixes for pasture systems, and you should see a lot of videos come up. But I definitely advocate those, especially for finishing cattle. They're great. That's why especially if you have a hard time finishing and getting grass finish animals, I would definitely do the mixes. Jerry Doan has been doing it for quite a while. A lot of people in North Dakota have been doing it, South Dakota. Yep.
Yeah, very cool.
Yep.
Well, Ray, it's been an honor to have you here. We appreciate you. Folks, if you just take a minute and share a takeaway that you have had from this presentation, that would be awesome. Let Ray know in the chat. Gratitude for having been here. Final thought, Ray, anything come to mind that you'd like to share with this audience?
I just want to share the power of one. We talked about it, how every one of you can make a huge difference. You know, if you would ask like 20 years ago, I'd go back to that spot. I had no hope. Really, I didn't have hope for agriculture because, the water was still unclean. I was a district conservationist, and I lived in Idaho side, crossed the Snake, and I was the district conservation in Oregon. The water was always, every time irrigation system season came, it turned into chocolate right there on my border. And I couldn't understand why a farmer that lived in the Treasure Valley, great water, great, great soils, why 500 acres couldn't support two families. Really bothered me. Could never kind of like nobody would ever answer it. But then I found out that the power of nature, and we mimic it and design it, and I find out if we share it and we reflect it on our farms and ranchers, we will change the world, guys. One person can make a huge difference. One person, it is not corny. One person makes a huge difference. And please, audience, the neighbors are watching you. All of you that have struggled and you did this journey on your own, and they laughed at you and mocked at you, I want to thank you for all the hard time you took and the journey you suffered through in the early stages. I am just one person of you, like you, that are down this journey. So I want to thank the audience for taking their precious time here and what they do every day, so that when you think that, you're going that extra mile, you're moving the cattle, you're doing all these things, you are making a difference and people are watching you. So I want to thank you for bringing healing to God's creation. And we do it together as a family and a team. So thank you for serving, that I get to serve you, and that you're part of and allow me to be a part of the podcast. So thank you, Jared, and the people that showed up.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Ray.
Yeah.
God bless you in your efforts. We hope that you live long enough to be able to see that tipping point reached.
I hope so too. Thank you. You guys take care. Blessings.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.